In the previous video, we have looked at creating a table in the layout view using the quick start features that are available in the Access database. In this particular video, we are going to understand what is the structure of a table. Since table forms the most important object of your Access database, it is very important that you know how these tables work, what are the features in the table called, so that it is very easy for you to relate to the structure of the table and then create it successfully. Let's input some data over here in this table, and then I'll be able to explain you what I mean to say while understanding the structure. Let's say an employee has a last name as Smith, and the first name of this employee is John. You must have noticed something, that as I type data for the last name and first name, Access is automatically generated an ID for the employee. This ID is the primary key basically. We'll get on to primary key later on, but you just need to understand that if you're not specifying the ID yourself, Access will automatically generate a unique ID for a particular record. So this is Smith, his first name is John. To move on to the next field, I can click on tab, and we need to specify the zip postal, which is basically his address. So let's say he stays at 102 Stewart. The country or region which he belongs to is London. And now we have other information also to put, such as the home phone, cell phone, his email ID, his picture, salary, etc. Since I'm just doing this for your understanding purposes, I'm not inputting all the data, but you need to keep in mind that in table, if you are inputting certain fields or certain headers, ensure that you complete all the information, or else if you don't require it, you can very well go and delete that particular field. Let's say we have one more employee and we want to input their data. The last name is King. The first name is Robert, and he stays at 102 Stewart again, and is also in London. So we now have this particular data filled in for these employees. What you see at the top, this top heading, is called as the header. This is very similar to the Excel. When you open the Excel and you fill in some data, making rows and columns, the headings that you give to a particular column is called as a header. Similarly, in Access as well, we have these headers which define a particular column and the information that we put in. This first name is defining, this header is defining that whatever information we have put in that particular column is the first name of the employee. So this is known as the header. Similarly, what we have over here, this wherein you fill in the data of that particular header, these are known as cells. Exactly similar to Excel. If you have used Excel, you will be very well versed with these terms I'm using. This is called as a cell, C-E-L-L. So these cells are fields which specify certain data. These cells are all rectangular and have certain dimension which can be resized. We'll get back to that later, but these are cells which specifies the data, and you can use the tab key on your keyboard to move from one cell to another. This entire row, you can now see that there is a solid black arrow in front of you. This is the entire row. It shows that you have selected the entire row, and this row selection is called as a record. This entire thing which gives you the employee's ID, last name, first name, the address, the region that they belong to, home, cell phone, etc. All this together is called as a record of an employee in this case. Otherwise it is called as a record. Okay, let's open this table in the design view, and you will find that it is very similar. We have all the field name over here with the kind of data it has, the data type, and you'll also find that there's a column for description. This description, as you can see, is optional, which means that If you want, you can input the description over here, or you can skip it as well. But this description is basically if you want to specify any information about that field. So you can mention it over here. Many a times if you want to remember some data regarding that field, you can input it over here so that it's always there to remind you regarding that field. If you notice, there's a small key symbol given to ID. Now this has default by access become the primary key. Now what is a primary key? Primary key is a field in a table which is unique, and it makes a particular record, the entire row, unique. For example, in our case, it is the employee ID which has become unique. This employee ID separates itself from the other part of the data and makes it unique and independent. Always remember this. Whenever you are working on your Access database, it is important that you provide a unique ID, a unique data in your Access database, which will be very useful in the future. You will see that when we are creating relationships and linking our data together, how this primary key, this unique ID, will play a very important role. Hence, while creating data, you need to ensure that this ID is well in place. We'll see much of it again in the next 2-3 videos, but here you need to import. It is very important while understanding the structure of the table that primary key is something very, very important. Coming back to the data sheet view. So this is what is it all about, the structure of the table. You need to remember what are headers, what are cells, what is a record, and the most important, what is a primary key. So this was about the structure of the table. Let's move on and then create another table.